everybody. Welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We are out here at Pelham High School where our game of the week is going to take place this Friday night between the Pelham Panthers and the Oak Mountain Eagles. That's right, Oak Mountain will be part of our game of the week yet again this Friday night. But it's more so we have never been out to Pelham High School to broadcast for our game of the week, so I wanted to come out here, give them a shout-out. It's clearly showing that they are headed in the right direction under head coach Tom Causey as this team really tries to rebuild after the split with Halina a few years ago. And that was the last time these two teams met. It was really a rivalry game that Oak Mountain and Pelham met every year, almost that Oak Mountain had been in existence up until the year 2013. They have played 12 all-time meetings. We'll dive a little bit more into that game since it is our game of the week. But the first thing I'm going to start with, I want to talk about last Friday night's games because we have a lot of teams on bye week this Friday night, so we won't get to touch on them and the performances they had last week throughout the show. So we're going to do that first after we do our intro segment here. Then we'll jump into our game of the week and break down the other 5 matchups that we have in the AHSAA as well as our AISA games and ACSC games that we have going on this Friday night as well. So we're going to talk about all of that and name our SCR Stars of the Week at the end of the show, which we do every week, and it's a long list of players this week. We had some great performances last Friday, so we'll make sure to touch on all of those and all the impressive performances that we saw. On a personal note, I will be getting married this weekend, so I'll be out the next 2 Friday nights, and I know I'm having a fall wedding, football season. Go ahead and give me some flack for that, but we will still have great coverage for you. We'll have our stories posted on Facebook and on Twitter at the end of each Friday night, so stay tuned. We're going to have plenty of great coverage from my coworkers that are picking up the slack with me gone, so we'll still have plenty of great stuff to look forward to. But right now, football season, we're at the midway point of the year. This is an important week. It's a non-region week for the teams that are playing this week, but you don't want to lose any momentum or have a setback this week because after this week, it's right back into region play, and that's when we hit the knit and grit. That's when we find out who's going to be in the postseason because most teams will have 3 or 4 region games in a row that will decide their postseason berth, and a lot of them need to win all 3 or 4 of those games to be in the postseason. Both of these teams in that situation to where they need to win several games to make the playoffs this year. But it's going to be a tough stretch there, and we're going to find out which teams are for real and which ones will not be going to the postseason in 2018. So we'll touch on that. We'll talk about all the important things this week. We're going to start with our recap from last week's games before we dive in to our game of the week out here at Pelham High School. So as the Pelham Panthers actually come out to warm up for practice that they'll be starting here in just a few minutes, the first game from last week that I do want to talk about is going to be that Pelham-Chelsea game simply because Chelsea does not have a game this Friday night. They will be on bye. So we're going to talk about that game and recap everything that happened and really what has been the game of the year to this point and may hold up to be the game of the year overall at the end of the season too because it was a shootout back and forth the entire time between those two teams. And, you know, Chelsea's had a good defense for most of the season. Pelham's offense started out hot in those first 2 games after falling behind early in the first quarter to Calera in game 1. They bounced back and were a monster offense the rest of that game and the next game and then kind of slowed down a little bit, but we saw it again last week. These two teams combined for 88 points in that game. Pelham did go on to win 46-42 thanks to a late score, but throughout it was just a shootout back and forth. And to show how good it was for Chelsea, despite the loss, they hadn't put up 30-plus points since the end of the 2016 football season. So it's an offense that early in the year was really reeling, trying to find any kind of momentum that it could under first-year head coach Dustin Goodwin, and they got a lot of it, especially going into a bye week this week. That's so much momentum that they can build off of moving forward in throughout the season, really, into the second half of the season and to close out region play. I mean, that's an offensive performance that they haven't had in a long time, and it's a team, to be honest with you, that, you know, might not be the most talented on that side of the ball, but it shows their work ethic and what they've done to improve each week. So to put up the 42 points that they put up in that game when they really hadn't even sniffed 30 points in a long time, that's an impressive feat for them. Despite the loss, they have to take that as a positive. But clearly, it was a fantastic football game to watch, and Graham Brooks was out covering that one, did a great job on Twitter. His thumb was probably about ready to fall off at the end of the night with all the updates he had with kick returns, interceptions, fumbles, punt returns. It was just nonstop action, long touchdown passes, long runs. It just went on the entire night. And some interesting stats. We had a 95-yard kickoff return from Ladarius Gary there for Chelsea. Lando Nichols, 80 yards receiving and a touchdown for Chelsea. Turner Griffin, 246 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. And I said against Briarwood in that first game, he really showed some promise in the second half of that game, and I could see potential for him moving forward, and he's finally showed it in that breakout game against Pelham. He did have some struggles at times, but overall to throw the way he threw the ball in that game, to keep his team coming back with shot after shot, touchdown passes, deep throws, it was an impressive thing to see. So hopefully that sparks him moving forward as well. But an all-around impressive performance for the Chelsea offense and for Pelham too. It's an offense that we've seen spurts where they've just been the best offense in the state almost. And it's been up and down all season. They've been with a 2-quarterback system. Both quarterbacks played and both quarterbacks looked awesome in this game. Matthew Rye started out with 3 touchdown passes early on, ended up with 5 in the game, 297 yards passing. But Xavier Langford also came in after Rye had thrown those initial 3 touchdowns. They put Langford in, and he came in and threw 2 touchdown passes. So it shows not only that both guys can put up points at the quarterback position, but it also shows that the team is starting to rally around both guys. And I think that was kind of head coach Tom Causey's strategy there, was to kind of get both of those guys involved in that game, despite how well Rye was playing, so that his team could start to rally around each guy, because he wants to use them both as much as possible moving forward. So impressive games from both quarterbacks. And then you also had Edward Gibson, who ended up with 159 yards receiving 2 touchdowns. You had Brandon Sledge and Casey Clark, who both had dominant games, combined for 4 touchdowns, 2 apiece. Sledge had 53 yards receiving, Casey Clark 93 yards receiving. And then running back Dylan Peterson, who's been a monster as well this year, he had 120 yards on the ground. So all around an exciting game there between those two teams. And I'm excited to see what Pelham puts together this Friday night against Oak Mountain, and what we see from Chelsea moving forward when they come out of their bye week. Whoa, a little bug almost got me there. When they come out of their bye week in a couple of weeks. But the next game I want to touch on from last week and recap is going to be the Thompson-Tuscaloosa County game. And what did you expect other than a shutout from the Thompson Warriors? They've taken advantage of opponents that haven't been quite up to their level of competition athletically and talent-wise throughout the season. So it was an impressive showing from Thompson again, 35-0 in that shutout. Talia Tungavaloa continues his impressive season, 350 yards passing, 3 touchdowns through the air, also added an additional rushing touchdown in that game for 4 total. And Michael Petway, just a monster this season. 100 yards, I believe, in almost every game this season. There might have been one where he was at like 97, but he's almost gone over 100 yards in every game receiving this year. He had another monster night this week with 115 receiving yards. And Shadrack Bird's one of those guys that you're going to focus a lot on this passing attack with Tungavaloa and all the receivers that Thompson has, but Shadrack Bird is a running back that can make you pay if you do that. He had 103 yards rushing on the ground, and it was just an all-around good performance that Thompson needed going into a bye week. I guarantee you they're going to take lessons from every game they've played in this year, especially that Hoover game where the defense needed to show some improvement, really containing the quarterback in the pocket and doing some other things well as well. So they're going to watch tape. They're going to get in the film room during this bye week that they have coming up. And try to shore some things up, because they still have a shot at a region championship. They get Vestavia, Mountain Brook, Spain Park, and Hewitt-Trussville in the second half, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle that schedule, because Vestavia and Mountain Brook at the beginning of the season might have thought easy games. Both of those teams in the top 10 right now, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle those. And then, of course, that big showdown on ESPN2 with Hewitt-Trussville there in the last region game of the season. That one could actually be for the region championship between those two teams, which should be just an enormous game to watch out there at the new Warrior Stadium as ESPN televises that one. So Thompson will go into that bye week with a strong start to the 2018 season as they look to claim their second straight region title. Spain Park, Hewitt-Trussville, another game to look back at, and Spain Park struggles. They continued. They've lost 4 in a row now. And they stayed in this game for a little while, especially in the first quarter, in the first half. But Hewitt really came out and just put a light up in the second half on the scoreboard. Their points were nonstop. They end up winning that one 44-13. And Spain Park's reeling on really both ends of the field right now. We'll see what happens moving forward. But there's definitely a strong chance that we might see the passing of the baton here. It looks like Harrison Barker got a lot of play in last week's game in that loss to Hewitt-Trussville, so he may be the guy moving forward at quarterback. Jalen Henderson, on the other hand, he continues to be an extremely good football player, consistent, powerful runner for the Jaguars, but he's really all they've had on offense this year. They're going to have somebody step up, and their second half region slate, they're going to start with Thompson and Hoover, so they'll come off of the bye week this coming week, and they'll go straight into those two matchups, and that's not an easy slate there when you're taking on two top 5 teams in back-to-back weeks coming off a game against the number 2 team in the state. So it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table to start those two games against Thompson and Hoover, and it's a team that last year almost beat Hoover, struggled against Thompson, but played Hewitt-Trussville close as well. So they still have that potential. They're still a talented football team. We'll see how they handle things moving forward in the second half of the season. The last game we're going to recap, look back at from last week, is going to be Montevallo and American Christian. And it was a very interesting game, a tale of two halves, really, as Montevallo struggled out of the gates, fell behind 35-0 in that game, came back and actually made it interesting. They were actually down 70-22 at one point, but to show the fight and the grit that they were never going to get up, it didn't matter who was in the game on either side of the on either team, either side of the ball, anything. They were going to fight back. They came back. They made that a 70-54 game, only lost by 2 scores there as they put up some big offensive numbers yet again. J.J. Evans, 167 receiving yards. He like Michael Petway at Thompson, he's going over 100 yards every game, and it's been an incredible start to the 2018 season for him. Malik Bennett, another impressive game, over 200 yards again, which he has been in every game this season so far for Montevallo. Had 249 yards and 4 touchdown passes. Did throw 2 interceptions, but against an American Christian defense that had given up 0 points through their first 3 games, not a single point through those first 3 games, Montevallo comes up and puts a 54 spot on them in this game. So that was an impressive showing from the Bulldogs there to gain some confidence. Their second half to the region schedule, really, it's a toss-up. They should win most of those games. They should be in the playoffs. I expect them to get the 2 or 3 seed coming out of that region. We'll see how it plays out, but they're definitely battling for the 2 seed, in my opinion, and I think the offense is playing well enough that they should get that position. Now we'll jump in. We've recapped all the games from last week that I wanted to talk about. We'll jump in, talk about all the matchups we have coming up this Friday night between the AHSA, AISA, and ACSC, and we're going to start with the game of the week out here at Pelham High School. Before we dive into the game, I want to talk a little bit. The Pelham Panthers actually are going to be unveiling their new field house very soon. They've been in an old building for a long time. You can kind of see it over my left shoulder there. In the background, it says Pelham, and the entrance to that thing I pulled up today. It is a beautiful facility. Another reason that Pelham's kind of taking that next step. They're really building a lot of faith in head coach Tom Causey and this football program, and that's going to build some confidence among the players. So make sure you come out this Friday night for this big matchup between these two teams, that you check that out on your way into the entrance. You won't be able to miss it. It looks beautiful, but just wanted to give some kudos there to all the people buying into the Pelham athletic program out here, especially the football side of things. It's obviously been a slow couple of years, but you can see them really building to try to make this as great of a program as possible. But I want to dive in, talk about this game. It's going to be, if you like offensive football games, this is your game. You should come out and watch this one no matter what, because these two teams are going to put up points. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and a renewal of a rivalry. Like I said, Pelham leads this series actually all time 10-2, but that kind of dates back to 2013 was the last time they played. Pelham won a shootout 42-41 in that one. I expect something similar between the two this Friday night. But last time they played, they were in the same classification. It was before Halina had split, and Pelham and Halina had split into 2 separate schools. So Pelham was much larger, and it was just a different kind of feel back then. Pelham was a team that could compete with the likes of Spain Park, Hoover, Oak Mountain, those kind of schools, Thompson. And now it's since that split, you've had a lot of kids go off to Halina, and that's something that they're trying to change and continue to make this school as good as it can be, and the athletic program as good as it can be. But Oak Mountain, a 7A school against a 6A school, you do have that big advantage when it comes to depth in a classification like that. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But so the 10-2 all-time record, basically what I'm saying is that means nothing in this game, because it was a different ball game back then when they were playing each other for those first 12 years, really, that Oak Mountain was a football team. So this week, though, like I said, it's going to be a lot of offensive points. Both of these offenses are lighting it up so far, and the defenses are giving up a lot of points as well. Pelham coming off that 46-42 win against Chelsea. After 2 straight losses, that was a big win to get that momentum back and show that they could really do some big things this year, especially on the offensive side of the football, which really impressed me through those first 2 games, and then kind of laid an egg against Homewood, and it struggled the couple weeks before that strong performance there against Chelsea last week. Oak Mountain, on the other hand, coming off a loss. They lost 48-20 last week to Hoover, but it ended a tough gauntlet against 3 top 5 teams. Nothing to hang their heads on with that loss. I mean, they were, I'm sure, exhausted, physically beat up after that tough gauntlet. Now they enter this game. They're not going to have another bye week before they get back into region play the week after this, but they will have their chance to get some momentum back with a win against the Panthers on Friday night. We'll see how it unfolds. But either way, the second half of the region schedule, while Mountain Brook and Vestavia have shown that they are solid football teams this year, both inside the 7A top 10, if Oak Mountain can compete with the likes of Hoover, Thompson, and Hewitt, almost pull off upsets in 2 of those games, then the second half of their schedule against Tuscaloosa County, Mountain Brook, Vestavia, and Spain Park, I think they should win all 4 of those games and make the postseason, to be honest with you. But either way, I think they're going to be competing for that 4th and final playoff spot in Class 7A Region 3 either way. So, but like I said, this game, a lot of offense is going to be had between the 2 teams. Right now, both teams are giving up 26-plus points per game while scoring 32 points on the number per game. Both of them scoring right about 32.2 and 32.5 points per game. So it's going to be unbelievable to see when you have 2 defenses that are not the best this year versus 2 offenses that are playing lights out. And that's going to be a key to this game is you can't have a setback because, say, one defense shows up and the other offense is not, it doesn't show up, then it's going to be a long night because both of these offenses are so good that neither one or not both are going to play bad. So there's going to be at least one of these offensive teams that shows up, has a good performance. So you need to make sure to bring your A game if you want to pull off a win. But it's going to be an exciting night out here nonetheless. Our game of the week, first time at Pelham High School. So the only in-county matchup and one of the best games on the entire slate of games this Friday night with a break in region play. So make sure you get out here, support either team. I know Oak Mountain tends to travel extremely well. Pelham's going to have a great home crowd. So get out and check out this game of the week between these 2 teams. It's obviously been a not-so-strong start for the Calera Eagles this season, sitting at 0-4 through their first 4 games. It's been a struggle. They've dealt with the injuries. They've dealt with some chemistry things, practice issues, all kind of things. But this is a chance for them. This is the first game where you really sit back and say, man, they really can win this football game. They should be favored. They've won this game the last 4 years in a row. They're going to be taking on Bibb County, a team that used to be in the same region as them when they were in the 5A classification, and it's their first 5A team of the 2018 football season. They've played a slate of 4 6A games in a row, which is just a tough jump, and I don't know that a lot of people understand. You may sit back and look at Calera and say they're just not a good football team this year. If they were in 5A and they were healthy, this is a team that would have been competing for a 5A state championship. That's how drastic the jump up from 5A to 6A is, and we're going to talk about that again with Briarwood and Hartselle this week, as Briarwood, a 5A team, will be taking on a very good 6A Hartselle team as well. So it's just a drastic jump that a lot of people don't realize has an effect and an impact on the team. Now Calera gets their chance against a very average 3-2 5A Bibb County team. If Calera is healthy in this game, they're going to have their chances. If the team shows up, doesn't think about the last 4 weeks, which coming off a bye, I'm sure head coach Andrew Zal's got this team refocused and knows that there's still goals ahead. They seriously can still make the playoffs if they battle hard enough. Obviously, that's going to be an uphill battle, and it's a long shot, but at the same time, this is a team that's trying to build for the future, and this is a big opportunity for them to gain some confidence. Plus, it's bragging rights. You don't want to lose to Bibb County. You don't want to be the team, after beating them the last 4 years in a row, you don't want to be the team that loses to them. So there should be plenty of momentum, plenty of reason for them to want to get up and win this game. It's a strong opportunity for the Eagles to pick up a win this Friday night. Their final 3 region games are going to be against Selma, Opelika, and Benjamin Russell. They should be able to beat Selma, too, to be honest with you. That'll be an interesting game to watch the week after this. They could get a 2-game winning streak if they win this Friday night and then beat Selma. But then Opelika and Benjamin Russell, obviously 2 very good football teams. Those are going to be difficult contests. But it starts this Friday night. Focus 1 game at a time. If you can win this one, that gives you some momentum. And why not? This is a game you should be favored in. You've got plenty of athletic talent. Take advantage of it. I think that Calera's got a good shot to pull off the win against Bibb County. Repeating what I just said, Halina has the exact same chance as Clear. They're going to be taking on a 5A team. Halina's winless on the season so far, sitting at 0-4. This is a big opportunity for them to gain some confidence as well, and really not just gain confidence, but build off of confidence. Despite coming off a tough 26-19 loss to Minor, this is a Halina team that gained loads of confidence in the second half last week. They trailed 19-2 in that game to Minor and just slowly chipped away, battled back, got within 3 at 19-16 before Minor scored again. Halina added a field goal, made it 26-19. Had their chances, but it was just not enough time to pull off the complete comeback. That being said, they fell behind 19-2. The way the season had been going, they had every reason to fold, lose that game in blowout fashion. They battled back, almost pulled off the come-from-behind win in that game. So that's something they can build momentum off of moving forward. Now they get a matchup against Southside Gadsden this Friday night, and this is a game I've had circled for Halina since the start of the season, after week 1, really, when I started to see how the season was progressing. But this Southside Gadsden team is 1-3 in the 5A classification and coming off a 42-0 shutout loss. So Halina on the rise with momentum, Southside Gadsden going the other way. So this is Halina's best chance to pick up a win so far this season. They get Chelsea the week after this, just like Calera, having a chance at a 2-game win streak. So will Halina. Chelsea's a team also on the rise right now, but that's a team Halina should be able to compete with the following Friday night. So you win this one, that builds your confidence even more going into that big matchup with a rival in Chelsea and a region opponent as well. So obviously a non-region matchup with the 5A team this Friday night, but that doesn't make this is probably their most important game of the season. Dustin Goodwin Richie Busby's finally seeing some progress there from his team, getting them to believe, and it showed in the second half. If they can continue to rise and build that confidence moving forward, it's a team that's not only it doesn't benefit just the rest of this year's team, but benefits the teams moving forward in the future. So obviously very important matchup, and that's a lot to put on this one game, but I really do think it's that important for Halina this Friday night. I think they should be able to beat Southside Gadsden, and it's going to continue to build that momentum for them moving forward. Like I said just a few minutes ago, that jump from the 5A classification up to the 6A classification is one of the most difficult among any in high school football in the state of Alabama. And while Briarwood's competing in the 5A classification this year, this week they get their toughest test of the season possibly. I know they have games against Ramsey and a couple other that are going to be tough moving forward down the line, but this Friday night they get a 6A Hartselle team that is undefeated right now, and that jump up to a 6A competition team is very difficult. And while Briarwood's one of those 5A teams, obviously number one in the state in the 5A classification, will be competing for the state championship, it doesn't matter. They have a lot of depth on the offensive line. They're very big, very physical. They obviously have a strong run game, a very physical and strong defense, but that jump up is so tough, and that's going to make this game difficult. If it was a 5A undefeated team that was number 2, I have all the confidence in the world in Briarwood, but going up against a 6A top 10 team that is undefeated, it's a different animal. I do think they're going to have their chances to win this game. I'm not saying they're going to lose it. They're a very good football team, and it's shown on the field this year, and it just starts with their defense. Their defense so far has pitched back-to-back shutouts, coming off a 29-0 shutout thumping, really, of Winona last week, and that's a team that's been a rival the last couple years, has competed for the region championship with Briarwood the last couple years. Briarwood is just playing unbelievable on the defensive side of the ball, and it's showing each and every week. It's just hard to see teams scoring on them. Chelsea, a 6A team, put up 6 points in that first game of the season. The next week, Briarwood gives up 6 points, but now back-to-back shutouts each of the last 2 weeks as a team through 4 games, sitting at 4-0 overall, 2-0 in region play, that is giving up 3 points per game. And it's unbelievable right now. And I do think that Hartselle will score points in this game, but it's hard to really see them scoring more than 10 points. While there is a jump up when it comes to competition to the 6A level, this is a Briarwood defense that is so physical and tough to prepare for. And it really just wears you out on both sides of the ball, because the offensive line is one of the best that the team has ever seen. Head coach Fred Yancey told me that early in the season, and that says a lot because he's been there for almost 30 years now. So it's a very good Briarwood football team, maybe better than last year's once the offense starts to grow and form into shape. Right now, that's their only downside. They haven't really had much of a passing game yet, but last week we saw what I was wondering if it was going to happen all season long, and that's Jonah Carroll stepping into the starting quarterback role. He didn't start the game. J.R. Tran-Reno did start the most athletic kid on the field, so rightfully so. And he's had a good season so far up to this point, but he's just so athletic that you really want to get him the ball in space if you can, and that's what they were able to do last week. They put Carroll at quarterback there to start. Not to start, but to play the majority of that game, and it allowed J.R. Tran-Reno to really get into space, running the ball and catching the ball. And if Luke Pruitt gets back, that just makes it a two-headed monster as well. But that's another reason Tran-Reno is moving out, and they do have Carroll at quarterback right now, is because they need Tran-Reno to get the ball in space as much as possible. I think that's something we see moving forward. And while neither team, Hartselle or Briarwood, is lighting up the scoreboard so far this season, scoring just more than 20 points per game so far, and both are playing good defense. Hartselle's only giving up 13.8 points per game, so not too shabby there either, to Briarwood's 3. So there may not be a lot of points scored in this game, but I do think Jonah Carroll making that move, Tran-Reno having the chance to get the ball in space, could be a huge difference maker. If they score points, this defense isn't going to allow more than 14 points, in my opinion. If they're able to score points in this game, it's going to be a long night, because it's just going to be tough for them to keep up with how tough and physical that Briarwood defense is. Like I said, we'll see how the jump to a 6A team affects Briarwood on Friday night, but it should be a lot of fun. This should be one of the better games that we see this week. If we had a Team of the Week award, it would have gone to the Shelby County Wildcats last week. That's the next game we're going to talk about. They'll be taking on Moody this Friday night. And I've said it every week that Shelby County picks up a loss, the slower and slower that they started, that this was a schedule that set up for them to have wins and build some momentum down the line. And it showed last week. They obviously pick up a dominant 44-18 win last week. And it was, from start to finish, just an impressive showing on both sides of the ball there against Marbury. So it'll be interesting to see how they build off of this moving forward, because while they're sitting at just 1-4 right now on the season, this is a Shelby County team that the remaining games on their schedule are struggling. They're playing several teams the rest of the way, 4 of their final 5 games to be exact, against teams with a record below 500 on the season. So like I've said all season and will continue to say, the schedule sets up for wins moving forward, and this Friday night is another big opportunity for them. This is a non-region game, against Moody. Last year they were in the same region, but they switched up regions this year. But it's a game to continue to build some momentum off of last week's win. It's a Moody team that's sitting at 1-3 on the season so far, and is coming off a strong loss, 41-7 last week to Central Clay County. So both of these teams sitting kind of in the same position at 1-3, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But after 12 combined points through the first 3 weeks of the season, Shelby County's bounced back the last 2 weeks. So and just played unbelievable on the offensive side of the ball, combining for 68 points in the last 2 games. And they lose 2 weeks ago, but head coach Heath Childers has said that's when this team started to build that confidence. And amazing what confidence can do for a team, and it's showing for Shelby County right now after that strong win last week against Marbury. It's something they need to build off of moving into this game. It's a Moody defense that's giving up 25 points per game, and with Shelby County possibly having turned the page on offense, if their offense plays like they have the last 2 weeks, specifically the second half 2 weeks ago and the complete game last week, then it's a team that's really going to make some noise against this Moody team. I still need to see it to believe it a couple more times, but if they can win this one, I swear to you, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up winning a couple more, making the playoffs and getting the 4 seed in their region. It's a team that's shown it has turned the page from last season and the struggles and some of the people that left the program. This is a team, I think, that really does have a strong mentality despite their struggling 0-4 start. So now sitting at 1-4 on the season, that's the correct record. I get it. I got it now. But sitting at 1-4 on the season, they're going to have their chances moving forward with those games against teams that sit under 500 overall with their record so far. So I like what I'm seeing, the growth, the understanding that they're getting, and really the improvement that they're showing. They had every reason to just give up after that 0-4 start, something they did last year and something they admitted to doing after they had missed out on the playoffs and struggled there at the end of the season after a strong start. So it just shows their growth already. I like them going into this Moody game. I don't know if they're going to be able to pick up a win, but either way, you have to like what you're seeing from Shelby County after the slow start to gain this confidence moving forward. So the last AHSAA game that we're going to talk about this Friday night is going to be between Vincent and Winterboro, and it's the schedule's just been tough for Vincent to handle so far. Sitting at 0-4, they just hadn't really had any breaks in a schedule really that at the beginning of the year maybe wasn't so daunting, but teams continue to win, continue to make that schedule more and more difficult for them each and every week. Last week it was a game against Thorsby, a top 5 team in the 2A rankings, and it was too difficult for the Yellow Jackets to overcome. They're still continuing to learn, buy into head coach Lucas Weatherford's system, and learn things each and every week. So we'll see how they handle this matchup against Winterboro. It's really coming to, it's both sides of the ball. The offensive side of the ball scoring just 11.5 points per game so far, paired with a defense that's giving up 48 points per game. That's almost 50 points per game that they've given up on the defensive side of the ball. And it really comes down to exhaustion in the second half. They've been in, especially early in the season, were in a lot of those games that they ended up losing pretty handily in the first half, and had chances early in the second half even to make it a really close game, but just ended up fizzling out throughout the game. And that's been the theme of the season so far this year. But with a Winterboro defense that's giving up just 13 points per game, it's tough to see this Vincent team scoring a lot of points when they're averaging just 11.5 so far this season. I think that's the difference in this game. I do think Vincent's going to have a couple of chances in the second half of the schedule to pick up some wins, but this week it is going to be very difficult for them to be able to score enough points to make it their first win of the season. I still, like I said, think they have chances moving forward. Not sure it's going to come against Winterboro on Friday, though. So we've touched on all the AHSAA games so far this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the AISA and ACSC before we dive into our SCR Stars of the week. And we're going to start with the Hope Christian Eagles, another big win this past Friday night. They've now won 2 games in a row, sit at 3-3. They're 500 on the season. A good bounce back for them. They'll be heading into a bye week this Friday night, but they'll come back. They'll have chances again to pick up more wins down the line. But an impressive season so far from them. A team that didn't have enough players to compete in the ACSC 8-man league this year, but is still fighting every week that they're taking to the field. And to be sitting at 3-3, they've obviously played pretty good too. It's an improvement from last year's team, and we'll see what happens next year if they do have this success, if it leads to them getting back into the ACSC or something of those kinds. But right now, impressed with what I'm seeing from Hope Christian. This Friday night, we're going to have a big in-county matchup between Coosa Valley and Cornerstone, and both of these teams sitting really on the same end of the spectrum have struggled so far this season, both sitting at 1-5 overall, and have struggled on both sides of the ball throughout the season. Right now, Coosa Valley scoring just 9.7 points per game. Their offense was what I was excited about coming into the season. I still think it's going to grow. It's a work in progress so far, but Brayson Edwards at quarterback, they have plenty of talent. They're going to continue to grow and get better as the season goes along, but they're only scoring 9.7, giving up 30.2. Cornerstone, on the other hand, scoring slightly more points at 14.3 points per game, but also giving up more points at 35.3. So this should be a very good football team because both have had their struggles so far this season. Both are really similar football teams when it comes to talent level. I think Coosa Valley may slightly have a little bit more talent, but Cornerstone's got some big playmakers, especially Jake Blankenship and a couple others there. So we'll see kind of how the matchup goes down. But right now, Cornerstone started the season with a 41-14 win against Sparta and has lost 5 in a row. The Rebels have lost 4 in a row after their 22-17 victory against Pickens Academy. So both teams reeling right now. One's lost 4 in a row, one's lost 5 in a row. Something's got to give. One of them's going to win this Friday night. We'll see how it unfolds, but should be an exciting matchup between those two. Kingwood, they'll be taking on Chambers Academy this Friday night. A tough matchup for Kingwood, but they're now off to an impressive 5-1 start for the first time since 2013, and just continue to impress me each and every week. That game last week, I believe, was a final score of 49-7 against Cornerstone, so they really dominated that matchup from start to finish. But now the Lions get their crack at their second top 5 team in the last 4 games, and that's going to be a tough task. Chambers Academy sitting at number 4 in the standings, in the AISA standings, sitting at a perfect 6-0 overall this season. So it's a team that's probably better talent-wise than Kingwood. I would expect that Chambers should pick up a win in this game. but I would not be surprised to see Kingwood keep this one close and have a chance to pull off the upset. They're scoring 27.7 points per game, giving up just 12.3. That's been a big reason. They're not lighting up the scoreboard every week. Their defense is playing well every week. Although last week, that is something head coach Todd Bradford said he wanted to improve on, was the defensive side of the football. Chambers on the other end, though, they're scoring 47.3 points per game and giving up just 7 points per game. So while Kingwood's got a solid defense and okay offense, Chambers has got an extremely good offense and an extremely good defense. So they're just a really good football team and should win a state championship this year. So just a tough matchup all around for Kingwood. But sitting at 5-1, they're a very good football team this year, and I'm excited from what I'm seeing under second-year head coach Todd Bradford and the improvement that he's made. Evangel, they'll be taking on Success Unlimited, looking to bounce back. They also took on a very good 11-man AISA team last week in Bessemer Academy. They lost that one 48-20. Bessemer Academy sits in the top 10. Wouldn't be surprised if they win a state championship either in the AISA. So not a bad loss. Actually a very good second half there from Evangel. And they lost that one 48-20, but not a bad performance overall. They get a Success Unlimited team that's sitting at 2-3 so far this season, but they're a pretty decent team. It's the last 11-man game for Evangel. You know they want to win it, but either way, this is still the favorite as far as 8-man goes moving forward. I expect Evangel to win an ACSC state championship. Success is coming off a 63-7 loss last week, which could make this an interesting game. I do think that Evangel is going to have their chances. They could very well end up pulling off the upset. But that's all the AISA and ACSC action this week. Now we're going to dive into our SCR Stars of the Week. We'll close the show out with our SCR Stars of the Week, and it's a long list this week, close to 20 players, and there's big reason for that. I'm not just giving out awards to give them out. There were a lot of standout performances last week all across the county, so I'm not going to stay on each one for very long, but I do want to point out all of the impressive talent that we saw on display on the football field Friday night, and of course every week. It starts with Thompson, quarterback Talia Tungavaloa. Another strong and impressive performance, almost 400 all-purpose yards after rushing is included. Had one rushing touchdown as well, but 350 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. He just does it every week. It's almost automatic that he's going to throw for around 350-plus yards every week of the season. Michael Petway, another strong game for him. I mentioned it earlier, almost over 100 yards in every game so far for the Warriors. He's their go-to target this year, 115 receiving yards in that 35-0 shutout for Thompson, and also stepping up really his first big game of the season. He started out pretty strong early in the season, but bounces back this week with a huge performance against Tuscaloosa County. Shadrack Bird, 103 rushing yards and a touchdown in that win against Tuscaloosa County as well. So an impressive performance from those 3 Thompson offensive players. And the defense pitching another shutout. It's a defense that, they struggled against Hoover, but overall, since that second half against Oak Mountain, last week and then in those first 2 games, they've really looked solid, and it's a team that continues to improve. So it's not a team I would want to play in the postseason because their offense is always going to be really good, and their defense is going to continue to get better each and every week. And Evan Smith, quarterback at Oak Mountain, another obvious choice for an SCR Star of the Week again this week. A freshman, goes for 118 yards on 8 carries. The guy just continues to wow everybody. You walk up and down the sideline at the Oak Mountain games, and they're all talking about what Evan Smith is doing so far this season as a freshman. Plenty of upside for him over the next several years as well. But Luke Purser also had a strong game there running the ball, 141 yards on 17 attempts. That duo running the ball with the option attack, it's a tough offense to stop, and it'll be interesting to see. We're going to see it on display in this game of the week on Friday night, and I'll be interested to see, with both of these defenses struggling offenses being in shootouts, it's going to be fun to watch both Purser and Smith in that game with Pelham. And speaking of Pelham, they had several SCR Stars of the Week this week too. The host team out here, and it's going to start with quarterback Matthew Rye. Xavier Langford threw for 2 touchdowns. I do want to mention his name, but Matthew Rye had a strong 5-touchdown game, 297 passing yards. An obvious choice for one of the SCR Stars of the Week. Very impressed. It's it's tough when you don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be, who's going to come in at any given time. It's tough to keep your confidence and your morale high. I think both Langford and Rye are doing a tremendous job, and it showed with the performance they had last week in that big win against Chelsea. So another more strong performances from for Pelham. Dylan Peterson, the running back, 120 yards rushing. We mentioned that. Edward Gibson, 159 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. And he's one of the top guys. You've seen it recently on Twitter and Facebook. He's one of the top prospects in the state right now, and just continue to see him impress every single week that he plays football. A strong physical guy that's battling double teams almost each and every week because of his size. Brandon Sledge and Casey Clark combined for 4 touchdowns, 146 yards. Impressive performances for them as well at Pelham at the receiver position. So strong starts to the strong games last week for all of those players at Pelham. We'll see if they continue that success in another offensive shootout, which is what I expect against Oak Mountain on Friday night. On the opposing side against Pelham last week were the Chelsea Hornets, and we had Turner Griffin, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns passing for Chelsea. He continues to break out of his shell during his senior season and shows some signs of improvement. I expect that to continue moving forward. I've been impressed with him. A lot of people didn't know if he had what it took this year, and to see the progress that he's made each and every week, I've been really impressed with what Turner Griffin has done there under a first-year offensive head coach there for Chelsea. So Lando Nichols, also a strong game, 80 yards receiving and a touchdown. He was on the receiving end of 80 yards of Griffin's 246 passing yards. So another team where I want to mention several players from is going to be the Shelby County Wildcats. You had Chase Franklin, the running back there, 128 yards rushing and a touchdown on 21 carries in that game. And then you also had Raheem Montgomery, who's really just a freak athlete there. He can do just about everything, had 119 yards rushing as well, as Shelby County dominated on the ground, had those 128 yards on 21 carries, 16 carries, I'm sorry. So an impressive performance for him. Chase Holloman, the quarterback at Shelby County, actually aired it out a good bit. You don't see that from the Wildcats very often, but 128 passing yards and 3 touchdowns through the air for Holloman. Several receivers he connected with there in that game as well. So just an all-around impressive performance from Shelby County. We'll see how that it really helps them moving forward on the offensive side of the ball, which has really struggled early in the season. I expect them to continue to improve like they did last week in that big win. The last two that I want to talk about, both at Briarwood, Jonah Carroll comes in at quarterback, 10 of 17, 153 yards passing for 3 touchdowns, and a guy that, has really just kind of earned his spot into the starting rotation, and it's because they need running back J.R. Tran-Reno / athlete / whatever you want to call him. J.R. Tran-Reno played more at receiver this past week and had 102 receiving yards on just 5 catches for 2 touchdowns. So I expect that to be the same thing moving forward. I expect both of those guys to handle those specific roles. I do think that Tran-Reno is going to be a guy you see a lot at receiver, and I do think that Jonah Carroll has officially stepped in to the quarterback position just because it allows Tran-Reno to get the ball in space a little bit more and make plays. So congrats to all of those guys. I'm losing my voice already going down that list. That was a lot of SCR stars to talk about, but all very deserving. I expect all of them to have big performances this Friday night and big matchups too if their teams are playing, but especially in this Oak Mountain Pelham game out here, our game of the week. I expect all those guys I mentioned for both of those teams. It's going to be an offensive shootout, so we're probably going to be mentioning their names again very soon with our next video as well. So it'll be impressive. It should be a lot of fun to watch that game between those two teams. So we'll have our coverage. I know I'm going to be out of town the next 2 Friday nights, but we will still continue to have our great football coverage in Shelby County. We have some of the best teams in the state. A lot of fun to watch each and every week. And it's going to be a lot of fun the next 2 Friday nights, even without me here. I'm going to miss you guys, going to miss covering the football games, but I'm also going to enjoy the beach in Hawaii as well, so that won't be too shabby. But everybody enjoy. It's going to be a fantastic night out here at Pelham High School. Make sure you come out. First time they've been our game of the week in the last 2 years since we started doing these weekly videos and naming a game of the week. So make sure you come out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oak Mountain travels well, so if you're a Pelham fan, make sure you get out here. You want to make sure to give a good home field advantage to this team that's working hard out here behind me. So get out, enjoy the Friday night of football that we have coming up. But for now, that's going to do it from here at Pelham High School.